Hi Stampers, this is Dawn from DawnStampingThoughts.net, and today we're going to do a little shadow stamping. Okay, so let me give you all the measurements of the card first. I'm using the Early Espresso, and this is cut at 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. Whisper White piece is cut at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then Crumb Cake is cut at 4 by 5 1/4. All right, so then for the front layer, the largest piece of the Whisper White is cut at 2 5/8 by 4 7/8. Then the Early Espresso is cut at 2.5 by 4 3/4. And then another piece of Whisper White, which is the smallest, is cut at 2 3/8 by 4 5/8. Okay, so for the embossing folder, we're going to use the decorative dots. I'm just going to put the crumb cake piece in the side of the folder. And we're going to run this through the Big Shot. Okay, so there's our background. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do some stamping. We're going to do the shadow technique. And these are the two stamp sets I'm using. This one is going to be for the front of the card. And this is the Serene Silouettte stamp set. And then I went ahead already and punched out and stamped all these greetings to show you that you can use any of these greetings for this type of card. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stamp our Whisper White piece for the front of the card. We're going to use the Crumb Cake for sponging. And then we're going to use the Early Espresso for stamping the background, the shadow image, and then Versamark for the embossing. Okay, we're going to stamp this towards the bottom. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and clean our stamp before we use the Versamark. So I'm going to go ahead and get my Stampin' Scrub. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and stamp with the Versamark. But before we go ahead and stamp, we're going to use the embossing buddy just to prevent static over top of the image. I'm going to use the Stamp-A-Majig. So I went ahead already and stamped the image on a piece of vellum cardstock. We're going to layer this. See, this is how the image looks like underneath, but we're just going to slightly move it to create that shadow effect. I'm going to take our Stamp-A-Majig. Going to put that vellum right up into the corner and remove it. Then we're going to ink this up with the Versamark. And then we're going to go ahead and stamp this straight down right where we put the vellum. Okay, it's not going to really show up that well until we emboss it. So we're going to go ahead and grab our white embossing powder. And we're going to sprinkle this right over top of that Versamark that we just stamped. Okay, so there's our image. Can't really see it too good, not yet anyway. So let's grab the heat tool and we'll heat set this. So I'll just let that cool for just a second. It's really, really hot. All right, now we're going to go ahead and sponge with our Crumb Cake Classic ink. And I have my sponge here. Now I'm going to get a piece of scrap. Hold on. Okay, so now I found that using the Crumb Cake works a little bit easier with this technique. You could use the Early Espresso ink, which is the color that we used for the shadow. But I found that the Early Espresso was a little bit darker, so I'd rather add more Crumb Cake ink than to use the dark color right out the door. So we're just going to go ahead and add the Crumb Cake to the whole piece. And then of course if you want it darker, you can just keep adding more ink to that. But you'll see the image pop from the Whisper White embossing powder with the more ink you add. It's so pretty. Okay, we'll just go ahead and stop right there. But I added the little bit darker of the ink to the inside, just a little bit more there. And then as it faded out, I added less. So hopefully that shows up. All right, so now let's go ahead and put our card together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put some adhesive along the back side because I'm going to use some crumb cake. And this is the stitch satin ribbon, I believe. And I'm just going to tie a little flat knot over to the right hand side. Let's cut this down here. Then we're going to put this piece onto the early espresso. I'm going to pop this piece up on dimensionals. Okay, now we're going to put this piece onto the Whisper White. And then this piece is going to go on the front, closer to the left-hand side. I just wanted to have enough space over here to add one of the greetings. So like I said, you could use happy birthday, wedding wishes, with sympathy, and then thank you. And these were all from the Rose Wonder stamp set. And then I cut them out with this framelit that matches that stamp set with this image right here. That's what I cut the greetings out with. So I'm just gonna use this as a sympathy card. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pop this up on a dimensional. I'm gonna put a dimensional on the right hand side, since this will be the same height as this layer. You could actually put adhesive on the back side if you wanted to do that too. And then a couple more things. I'm going to go ahead and add some Wink of Stella to the background, and then a little bit to the embossed area too, because it just adds a little bit more shimmer. Okay, and then we're going to add some basic pearls. Just going to put 3 right on the background, just randomly. No particular order. Okay, isn't that beautiful? Okay, so there's that one, and then here's this one. Okay, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later. Bye.